All right, welcome back for another episode of the IBS Freedom Podcast. But this time, we're not really talking about IBS very much, are we, Amy? We're going to talk about seasonal immune support because the crud is going around. You were stricken with a crud, were you not?
Yeah, I'm honestly not sure what it was or if we had different cruds, but my daughter had typical cold symptoms. I felt a little run down and had more GI-based symptoms, and my husband had vomiting and GI symptoms. So it was really strange. I'm not sure if they were the same cruds or different, if it was like a stomach bug. And my daughter had a little bit of diarrhea, but nothing wild. So I'm not sure. She could have gotten something different than us, and we got the stomach bug. But it went through my whole extended family too, not just my husband and daughter. It seemed like my sister had a little something. My brother-in-law had something. My other sister had something. It was like we were all a couple days apart from each other with a GI bug. So just the Christmas and New Year's get-togethers also probably exacerbates the crudiness of everything that's going around.
Yeah, well, it's the time of year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there is actually pretty good research supporting the link between vitamin D levels and the flu to a point where places closer to the equator where they can get vitamin D all year long, like they don't really have a flu season. Flu season becomes more and more of a thing the further away from the equator you get. So, tis the season for everybody to get sick. But then, like you said, we just came off of the two biggest travel holidays of the year, Thanksgiving and Christmas. Everybody was in the airports, breathing all the air, getting all the cooties. And then you get you're eating a lot more sugar and a lot more junk. You're traveling, you're with a lot of people who you might not normally be exposed to. And it's just this perfect storm of that happens. And we also in our area, God, like my dad got the flu, all of his brothers got the flu, his sister, or I'm sorry, not flu, the 2020 plague, COVID.
Right.
My dad and his 4 siblings all got the Rona. One of them passed it to the other 4. And then a house across the street from us had the flu. A house across the street from us had COVID also. It was just, and then like 2 houses down, they got sick twice. Another person I know got a tummy virus thing. Everybody was getting sick. And I felt like we were the only ones who dodged it right now. It's like we're dodging bullets left and right. And I don't know if it's reasonable to expect that I can do that forever. Like maybe we will eventually get something this cold and flu season, but I'm not going down without a fight. That's the way I figure it. And I'm going to try, but we did narrowly dodge the bullet on multiple occasions this time because we, I hugged my aunt when she had COVID, but we were outdoors. So that was at least good. And my kid played with the kids across the street the day before they became symptomatic and tested positive for flu and COVID respectively. So just barely making it by the skin of our teeth, or the elderberry is working. One or the other.
God bless elderberry.
Yeah,
it's interesting about the vitamin D stuff too. I know Chris Masterjohn, he had a whole big COVID PDF.
I remember that.
And I know he updates it regularly, but I remember one thing he talked about for COVID, and I'm sure it's true for a lot of similar viruses as well, was that vitamin D, especially if someone's low, is you taking high doses for like 7 days seemed to help with outcomes in a lot of the studies. But again, preemptively, hopefully you're not sick right now, but preemptively trying to get outdoors or supplementing a little bit during the winter isn't a bad idea, just from an overall immune system standpoint.
Yeah. And I think like the getting outdoors is even better the closer you are to the equator. So assuming a lot of our listeners are in the Northern Hemisphere, if you're in like San Diego or Florida or something, then by all means try to get outside as part of the vitamin D thing. But if you're in like Ohio or New York or something like that, if you're in Buffalo, for example, don't even try. Like just suck it up and take the pill, because there's no way you're going to make enough vitamin D if you're in Buffalo, New York right now.
Well, it's funny too. You know that the paler you are, the more vitamin D you can get. So maybe that's my superpower during the
That's right.
During the winters. I can harness the power of the sun better, and then the summer it's the bane of my existence, just because I have a 20-minute threshold before I get scorched. That's
and you have a little bit of Irish blood in you, don't you? Do I remember that correctly? Is that where the red hair comes from?
You know what's interesting? So pretty much most of my immediate ancestry is from Germany. So I'm much more German. Like Hollenkamp's pretty German. But my 23andMe seemed to be like way more heavily like English, Irish descent, like 60% or 50 or 60%, which makes sense if you look at me. But it is interesting. Like all my immediate ancestry seems to be more German.
And I guess, Hollenkamp sounds German. But yeah, I think that we had talked about that maybe privately off the air at some point, that you had some like English or Irish to you.
Yeah.
Likewise. I'm Swedish, German, French, and English, I believe, is my makeup. And we blend in with the snow in the winter, don't we?
Yes. It's interesting too, just because my husband has never burnt, and I don't understand. I can't comprehend that. Like never wears sunscreen, never burns. So I'm just hoping Cece gets a little bit of that.
Yeah. Happy medium.
Right. But yeah, the vitamin D, I definitely think is a big one. I think circadian rhythms is probably a big one too, which could be a proxy a bit for vitamin D. Like trying to make sure you're getting sleep, resuming typical patterns, still getting some light exposure from outside, I think is definitely helpful for the immune system. It always makes me wonder, because my dad, he worked in a basement for like 35 years. And so like in the winter, he would leave and get to work by 6:30 or like by 7 a.m. So it was dark. And then he'd leave work at like 6 p.m. and it was dark, and he
was like a gargoyle.
Right. He never saw sunlight all winter. And I really think it like affected him in different ways. He was pretty bad. It was bad. And he's a runner, so like he would run maybe on the weekends during the daytime. But yeah, I always wonder a little bit about his circadian rhythms. Just his being
poor nervous system was so confused.
Right, all messed up during the winter.
And I said this earlier in the episode, and I'm going to take it back a little bit. So I said that we wouldn't talk about IBS, but on this topic, I think that you're right. I think that circadian rhythm could be a little bit of a proxy for this, but also I think it could be a proxy for stress.
Yeah.
And like busyness, right? When you get really busy, sleep goes out the window. When you're stressed, you're up late worrying about whatever you're stressed about. So I think it could be a proxy for a couple of different things. But I remember I saw a study, it's older. I don't remember how old, but it's a little bit of an older study, like early 2000s or maybe in the 90s, from Japan. And they had a small cohort of people, I think 11 people, and they put them in conditions of dim light or bright light on 2 different days. And all 11 people did both of the conditions. So one day they came in and they were in the dim light conditions, which was basically like indoor lighting, what a lot of us experience on a day-to-day. And then the bright light condition, that was supposed to mimic like being out in the sunlight, basically. Mm-hmm. And what they found, and the meals were standardized between the days. So they ate the exact same meals both days. And what they found was that when the people were in the dim light conditions, they made more intestinal gas compared to when they were in the bright light conditions. So believe it or not, a possible remedy or a step in the right direction, if you have a lot of bloating and gas and that sort of tummy strife, is to get your ass out in the sun and work on your circadian rhythm and get your eyeballs and therefore your nervous system exposed to bright light. I thought that was a really wild study. I wish somebody would replicate it because I thought it was really, really brilliant and very intriguing.
No, totally. That's wild. And I think that if you ever want to look at the connections between circadian rhythms and gut function, definitely check out Dave Mayo, his site. It's called Hack Your Gut. Because he has some great articles on there and focuses primarily on circadian rhythm as a way to help gut function. That's his shtick, as you will.
We all have a shtick,
right? That's his shtick, and he's good at teaching it and sharing information about it. But it is wild. I think that circadian rhythm just impacts so many different areas of health. So just being mindful of it when the days are really short.
And again, think about the Christmas holiday season too. Travel, maybe across time zones, maybe not. You've got parties, you've got New Year's, you've got weird eating patterns.
Or drinking.
Drinking. Yeah, there's probably a lot of reasons why people's circadian rhythms were quite different during the Christmas and New Year holiday season. And then that could be one of many reasons why a lot of people got sick.
Yeah, it's almost just, I think your resilience goes down to some degree in this time of year. I think it's sunlight exposure is a big one. There's the stress of just the holidays. If you're traveling a bunch, like you said, I think that just lowers your resilience. And then if you come into contact with a bug, your body just might not be able to handle it as well as if you had these other factors, these other ducks in a row that might be easier to accomplish at different times of year.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we touched on one supplement. We didn't call it a supplement really, but we did skirt around that, and that is vitamin D. What do you feel like is a reasonable dose for most people for vitamin D if we're using it as a supplement?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it could depend on like what someone's levels are, and maybe you don't know. But, if someone's levels look pretty good, I might do a lower dose, like 2000 IU or something. And then for someone that might be a little on the deficiency side, I might have them do higher doses for a period of time and then kind of work down to a more maintenance dose. So maybe like 5 to 10,000 IU, somewhere around there, if someone needs a little bit of extra support.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think that if you don't know what your level is, or if your level is pretty decent, I'd probably hunker around the 2,000 IU a day kind of range. Mm-hmm. If you know that you're deficient or insufficient, like if you knew, for example, that your level was, say, 30 or below, that's where I would start to think, okay, let's get you up to more of like the 5,000 kind of range. I have seen some people who have vitamin D below 10. And those are the people where I'm like, ooh, okay, you're going to have rickets at the rate you're going. Let's go ahead and get you up at like the 8 to 10 IU, 1,000 IU range per day for a while and then remeasure.
Right.
Pardon me, as we're talking about getting sick and I'm clearing my throat, but I think it's something else. I think it was the the lunch that I just ate. Not to go into this too deeply, but I was chuckling because way back in season 1, I learned something about myself doing this podcast, and that is chocolate makes me a little bit throat cleary, and it gives me a little bit of frog in my throat. Huh? Do you remember this?
Is it phlegmy or like a little post-nasally or what is it?
I don't know. I don't even know if I register it as post-nasal. I think it gives me a frog in the throat, like I need to clear the throat feeling.
Interesting.
A lot. But here's the thing. I could hypothesize maybe it's a histamine kind of thing, but I'm frankly unwilling to give up my chocolate. Because like in the grand scheme of things, I'm doing fine. And if I'm a little bit throaty for, 20, 30 minutes, whatever it might be, that is a price I'm willing to pay personally. But I did chuckle because I ate lunch before we hopped on this call. And the last thing I ate was some pineapple, which is also pretty high in histamine. And I was chuckling. I was thinking, ooh, is this a mistake to eat this right before I get on the podcast? Am I going to be clearing my throat? But then I obviously proceeded anyway because it was friggin' delicious. And my husband just cut up a big old pineapple and I wanted some. So maybe I just need to be a teensy bit mindful of histamine when I'm getting ready to film. So, I'm doing my best to mute myself when I am clearing my throat, but, confessing my own lesions, if you will, here today, and what I'm willing and unwilling to tackle. Like, I'm not going to give up pineapple anytime soon. I'll just deal with the teensy bit of histamine or whatever it might be.
Right.
But yeah, I think that that's a good range for vitamin D. For kids, I'd probably go more in like the 1,000 IU range or maybe even a little bit lower. I just have a liquid. It's either from Thorne or Orthomolecular. They look pretty much identical on paper, but it's 1,000 IUs of vitamin D per drop, and it's in either MCT or olive oil. So it's a pretty boring, clean looking product. And I'll just my daughter's a bit older now, and she's 8 years old, but she's not built like an 8-year-old. She's tall like me. So people frequently think she's 10.
Yeah.
So if you have a child who's about a 10-year-old stature, you could kind of loosely base this on, for your kid. But I'll put like 2 or 3 drops of vitamin D on her food. And so I'll do 2,000 or 3,000 IUs a day, but I'll only do that a couple times a week because honestly, I just forget. And it's not always super top of mind. So I probably average like 1,000 or 2,000 IUs a day for her through the flu season. Probably 1, I would say. But I think that's a more reasonable dose for a kiddo.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's good to think about the children's. That's what my father-in-law calls children. He says children's
plural
with an S, and it always makes me smile.
That's adorable. Yeah, well, another one that you already mentioned, and again, we didn't explicitly say, hey, this is a supplement you could take, is elderberry.
Yeah.
And that's one that's very kid-friendly. It tastes good. It's safe for kids to take. It's very effective. Have you joined the elderberry cult yet, or not quite yet?
It's funny. I definitely took some when we were first married. I remember buying it for something, and I don't even know if I had a cold because I went like 10 years without getting sick, and then we had CC and all hell broke loose. And I've been sick probably 3 or 4 times in the last year and a half. So I don't know if we've really dabbled in it too much. I haven't really been super sick. So I feel like which again, I think sometimes you want to try some of these things before you get super sick. Some of these probably work best pretty soon after you start having symptoms, like the sooner the better. But I might have taken some zinc before. I remember doing some research on zinc, but I don't know if I've taken elderberry a ton. I remember maybe taking it as a preventative for a period of time, like right when I got married, maybe during flu season, but nothing wild that I can remember or really specific. I haven't had tons of experience with it, I should say.
Okay. Yeah, I think what I would say, so I generally make my own elderberry syrup. I just get the dried berries and I just make the syrup usually.
Right.
What I've noticed is the recipes vary very widely. They vary very widely. Did that make sense?
Yes.
Vary with an A and then VERY widely. Anyway, the American English is weird. The American language is weird. So anyhow, I was looking up recipes again at the beginning of cold and flu season because I always need to refresh my brain on how much to put in the recipe. And I couldn't remember which one I had used before. So I just kind of pulled up a Google search and pulled up like 8 different recipes. They were all over the place.
Really?
Pretty much all of the recipes said 1/2 cup of dried elderberries and 3 cups of water. That was pretty much across the board. But then the amount of honey that they said to put in there was wildly different. And I think this honestly made me think of like food fear, sugar phobia, demonizing sugar kind of stuff, right?
Right.
The really hippy dippy, crunchy, recipe blogs, some of them said to use 1/8 of a cup of honey for basically 3 cups of liquid. And I was like, wow, that's not going to be sweet at all. But B, I think the honey is what acts as a little bit of a preservative and gives it a little bit
Right.
more of a shelf life. So like, that's only going to last like a week in the fridge, yo. Other extreme end, an herbalist who I think is very reputable, her recipe said to do a 1-to-1 ratio. So like however much liquid you get from the 3 cups of water and half a cup of elderberry, and you cook that for half an hour, however much liquid you have, that's how much honey you use. So if you have 3 cups of liquid, you do 3 cups of honey, which then I'm like, okay, that might be a little bit much. That's going to be really sicky sweet. But I ended up doing that one anyway, because I felt like, okay, at least the honey's going to act as a little bit more of a preservative.
Right.
Possibly, and it'll at least have a shelf life versus if I follow the other recipes, I'm going to have to throw it away after a week.
Right.
But yeah, that's a weird byproduct of the internet being what it is. And like we have all of this knowledge available to us, and they'll give literally anybody a blog or a YouTube channel or a TikTok channel.
Right.
But not everybody is providing you with reputable information, even though their website looks very polished and they have a lot of followers and they seem really legit. So anyway, I just was laughing at that a month or two ago. That being said,
Right.
my husband will not drink my elderberry syrup because I put a
Blast.
little bit of cinnamon and ginger in it, and then the honey is in it. So I actually buy regular old store-bought elderberry for him, and then
Right.
he will take that. But Jess and I both take the one that I make myself.
Yeah, does Jess like the elderberry syrup that you make?
I don't know if she likes it, but she will take it. We have ourselves in a routine right now. We got into this routine over the Christmas break because again, everybody was falling down with the crud around us.
Right.
So we had COVID, flu, everything around us. And I just kind of started us on this regimen. So she and I do some elderberry in the morning. And then here's another pro tip for those of you who have kids. So N-acetylcysteine, NAC, is another great preventative immune support aid. It helps boost glutathione production because it's a precursor for glutathione, but also NAC has some anti-inflammatory and antiviral qualities in and of itself, even beyond the glutathione thing. And it's a cheap supplement. So I take NAC kind of on again, off again when I remember it, but I kind of take it a little bit constantly because I know I don't get a ton of cysteine from my diet and I'm just kind of filling a hole in my diet. But in cold and flu season, I'm much more diligent about taking NAC. And if any of us get sick, I bump up the dose pretty quickly. But what I discovered with my daughter when she was really congested and boogery a couple of years ago, and I wanted to give her something. And, I had a limited repertoire of what I could get into her because she was young. And I just decided, well, NAC smells like a fart. And it's not going to be a good thing for me to just like dump out on a spoon and give it to her or mix with water and give it to her. And I can't get her to swallow capsules because she's young. So I figured, okay, maybe if I mix it with something, it'll mask the taste and the fart smell enough that it'll be doable because it's very sulfury. And sure enough, I dumped out a capsule of NAC and mixed it with a little bit of honey.
Yeah.
I don't know the chemistry of what's happening, but it's delicious and so different. It almost has like a tartness that's kind of lemony. It'll make you pucker even. And it transforms this like sulfury farty compound plus honey, which is sweet, and it turns it into something kind of sour and lemony and puckery. But it's much more palatable than the NAC would be by itself. And I do that and I give her a little bit of NAC most mornings right now through like cold and flu and crud season just as a preventative.
Yeah.
So
That's really interesting. Yeah, I need to figure out ways to get Cece to do things. She's even more stubborn, I feel like, with her intake than Jess is. Jess seems pretty solid, but Cece, the couple things I've had her do, I'll mix colostrum into her milk that she drinks. Especially if she's sick. I probably need to do it more regularly, but I do really like colostrum as an immune support. I've debated on doing cod liver oil, which I feel like is a big ask for for like a 1.5-year-old. So
But you need to condition her early. You have a better shot of doing it now versus my daughter's 8. If I just started giving Jess cod liver oil, she'd be like, what is this?
Right.
No.
Yeah, Cece has like a little bit, and I have it. I'm prone to it too. It's called keratosis pilaris. They're kind of like little bumps on your arms, and they can be on your legs. It's like the most prominent spots. But I also have some weird vitamin A snips, and cod liver oil is a good source of vitamin A. So I was like, should we try this? And I have the bottle. I just haven't built up the courage, but it has vitamin D in it too. So it's another one that's listed sort of as an immune aid, but I was looking at it more as just something that would help with inflammation and sort of some of the skin stuff and the potentially vitamin A deficiency that could be going on. But yeah, it's always interesting trying to get your kids to eat different things.
It is. I think if you could start them young, that helps. It's you kind of have to brainwash them before they're old enough to question it.
Okay.
Right? Like, she's still young enough. You're still like the coolest person in her eyes. Like, okay, let me phrase it this way. My grandfather used to eat pickled pig's feet.
Yeah.
And because I idolized him and because I was young and didn't know any better, I used to sit there and eat pickled pig's feet with him. And I thought it was the greatest thing ever. And all of the adults in the room were like, horrified. Oh my God, I can't believe. Yeah. And obviously, like, now I wouldn't eat that. Well, not obviously, but I'm just sharing. Right now in my life, I probably would not eat pickled pig's feet.
There's no room for that right now for you?
I have other fish to fry, so to speak, culinarily speaking. I've already vowed, much to my husband's chagrin, that this is the year that I learn how to cook liver.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know when. I'm easing my way into it. I am not a person who can start and stop things really abruptly. I have to like take the time to noodle, research a little bit, get into the headspace, start purchasing the ingredients. Like, I probably won't actually cook the liver until February or March, but I'm gearing up for it. I know it's coming. I know this is the year. And I feel like I would need a good long runway to get back into the mentality of eating pickled pig's feet. Because the last time I did that, I was probably 2. But,
I'm just imagining like you at 2 gnawing on this pig's foot.
Pig's foot? I know.
Yikes.
I know. Oh.
Yeah, Cece's pretty picky about vegetables, and she doesn't really like very many vegetables, which is the bane of me trying to make dinner. Like, I'll give her all the options and she just like eats the fruit, which I'm happy she eats fruit.
Yeah.
But yeah,
here's Mama the dietitian who's like,
right. And I'm like, it's funny too. Like the veggies she does like are very confusing to me. Like broccoli. I mean, like of all the vegetables, it's like, that's one that she likes. And then she likes corn, which I don't think is a huge surprise. But like she doesn't like carrots, potatoes, like don't.
Some of the more cliche ones.
She likes like sometimes mashed potatoes, but yeah.
Jess straight up. Jess has always been big into the cruciferous veggies. Yeah. So broccoli was it still is a huge one for us. Cabbage. We like shred up and cook cabbage in the oven. She loves it. I have a picture of her when she was like 3 and she's doing this kind of a thing, and she's picking up the little stringy bits of the shredded cabbage, and she's dropping them into her mouth like, oh, what a delicacy.
Oh my gosh.
I posted on Facebook. I was like, this is normal for a 3-year-old, right?
Right.
But she was, having the time of her life eating the cabbage, and we were cracking up.
That's hilarious. My niece liked to eat raw onions. No joke. Like cutting them up. Like my sister-in-law would cut them up like an apple slice. Like, and she just like,
funny.
Like eating like, it's like, why do kids get really into weird stuff like that? I don't know. Like she didn't like other vegetables really. It's like, of all the things.
Well, she's getting hella prebiotics with that one.
Oh,
man.
yeah.
Like the FODMAPs are feeding bifido like you wouldn't believe.
I'd like to look at her microbiome after
for sure.
couple solid years of raw onion intake.
My grandfather used to do that though. He, especially Vidalia onions. Oh my God. He would go to the store, he would get Vidalia onions, and he would bite into it like an apple. And all of us were like, whoa.
I know.
That's a bit whoa. But he was happy, to borrow one of his favorite expressions. He was happy as a pig in shit.
Yeah.
He thought that was the greatest. And yeah, apparently others are tapping into that love of raw onions. Maybe her parents should offer pickled pig's feet as an option.
Yeah.
Maybe same palate as my grandfather, born in 1924. So a little bit of a different time period that he grew up in, but maybe those taste buds live on.
Yeah. For sure.
Anyway, though, as per our usual, we have been led astray by our rabbit trails. But coming back to seasonal immune support. So we said vitamin D, elderberry. And I want to clarify one thing with elderberry. This is very much one that is going to be great for prevention if you use it as an acute treatment. So if you get diagnosed with a viral infection like the flu and you start taking elderberry, you want to pump it as soon as humanly possible once you start to get sick. If you develop symptoms on a Monday and then you don't get tested for the flu until Wednesday and then you don't buy the bottle of elderberry until Thursday, it's too late. It's not going to help you with that particular infection.
Right.
But if you start feeling like, oh, I don't feel quite right, maybe I'm coming down with something, and that's when you start taking it, that is when elderberry and the next herb I want to mention really, really shine. And you could think of them in sort of the same vein as Tamiflu. Right? Like Tamiflu, it's the same thing. If you go to, the urgent care or something, if you get tested for the flu the day you develop symptoms, they will offer you Tamiflu. If you get tested 2-3 days later, they're not even going to offer it to you because they know damn well it won't work. And the same thing is true for elderberry and echinacea. Echinacea is another one. It has good research supporting its use in colds and flus and viral infections, but you've got to take it early or you've got to have it on board as a preventative. It's not going to be something you take 3-4 days into having the flu and then expect it to do much of anything.
It reminds me too of another supplement you could potentially take is zinc. I know this is something I listened to a long time ago. Chris Masterjohn, I used to listen to his podcasts more often, and he was talking about how zinc, in the same way you were describing with the elderberry, you should take it immediately upon having symptoms and in fairly high doses. He has a video, I've shared it with a few people. He has videos called Chris Masterjohn Light. And one, I think it's called How Zinc Can Kill Your Cold or something like that. But again, I know when he talks about zinc, there's a particular form he likes. It's like a lozenge that he recommends. And there is a form, I can't remember if it was like gluconate or acetate. There's a couple different forms. I know he recommends a particular form of zinc being more effective than other forms for the cold. But in the similar vein as you were describing with the elderberry, he says, like, the minute that you kind of understand that you're heading towards a cold, to take it as quickly as possible.
Exactly.
So, and the zinc he recommends isn't overly expensive either. It might be wise, especially if you have kids, to maybe have some of these things on board just as, something in your cupboard if you need them versus scrambling to try to get them. Some of this stuff you could probably find at a health food store or at Kroger or some grocery stores, but it's nice to have things just on hand and maybe spend like $50 collecting a few items and having them in your cupboard might be worth it.
Yeah, well, and I think that is accurate. I mean, heck, that was one thing that 2020 taught me, I know, or it reinforced this. So luckily, I was thanking my lucky stars that year because I had a brick and mortar office and I had this big, vast herbal apothecary and supplement apothecary. And I remember as we were learning more and more, and I was like, okay, I was kind of slow on the uptake. Like I was kind of observing a little bit and I was like, they're just overblowing it. It's not going to be that big of a deal. We're going to be back to normal in 2 weeks, whatever. So by the time it became apparent, oh no, the world is shutting down and this is really, really, really bad. I went on, like Emerson or Full Script or whatever to go buy a bottle of zinc and they were out. Every brand, every form, everything was completely sold out. elderberry syrup, sold out. Like anything you could imagine helping with viral infections was sold out everywhere. And I was like, wow, okay. So I didn't get zinc, but I remember looking for an herb just out of curiosity. I was like, well, maybe I'll order some elderberries. They were totally out on my normal place where I get bulk herbs is Mountain Rose Herbs. They were totally out of elderberries. So I was like, oh, I'm just curious if they have mullein leaf, because mullein leaf is really, really good for coughs, especially like dry, non-productive coughs. And they were totally out of mullein leaf already. And I was like, whoa, okay, this is serious now.
Right.
But luckily I had elderberry syrup and I had mullein leaf in my herbal apothecary. I just was like, oh, maybe I'll stock up a little bit.
Right.
Nope, not in 2020. But
yeah.
But to that point, I will share. So there are 2 herbs. This is less about prevention now, and this is more active treatment for what it's worth. There are 2 herbs for coughs that are really, really fantastic. Mullein, which I already mentioned. So it's Mullein, I think is how it's spelled. Mullein leaf. I kid you not, it looks like asbestos. It's just this like fluffy, weird stuff. And it's light as a feather. It's the weirdest stuff to take. But you make a tea out of that and drink that a time or 2 a day. And it is fantastic for like dry, irritated coughs. You know, the cough where you're like, I don't even know where I'm like, I don't know why I'm coughing. I'm not getting anything up anyway. It's just a dry,
Right.
irritated cough. Mullein's fantastic for that. And asthma related coughing, I think it's also good for that. And then there's another herb if you have a really wet, mucusy, like, oh God, I'm getting loogies up every time I hack up. That kind of cough, there's another herb called hyssop, Hyssop. And again, you can get these on like Mountain Rose Herbs or Star West Botanicals. There are different bulk herb retailers, but you can make a tea with hyssop, and that is useful for so-called wet coughs also. I keep both of them on hand. I could see the bags right now in my little herbal apothecary on the other side of the room. I see them. They're in my sights. I'm never going to let them go because they are so useful.
That's good to know. Cece's had some like wet coughs the last couple months. In my young nephew, I don't know if he'd be allowed to take herbs because he's like 7 months or something, but he's had just the most long, like hard to shake coughing fit. They like wonder if he had RSV at one point, which like I don't necessarily know because I don't think he ever was super feverish or any. Like I would just think it'd be more intense, but maybe not. Maybe he could have had RSV, but he has had this long lingering cough. But Cece just wrapped up having a long lingering cough too. I feel like hyssop might have been a good option for her. Is it okay to take for kids?
I think I'll have to bust out my herbal safety textbook and double check it for you later. So people on the podcast, don't quote me right now, but I feel like both of these would be probably fine in kids, especially if you use smaller doses for smaller people.
And do they taste okay?
Yeah, they're both pretty fine taste-wise. The last herb I want to wrap up with, though, is one of the most nasty herbs you're ever going to taste in your entire life. So I wouldn't give this next one to a kid. But yeah, for either of these teas, you could make them as a tea and then maybe just use like a dropper and do drop doses or like milliliter doses for a kid. And it probably would be fine, I would think. I will say too, and that we're sort of getting into like one of the ways to view herbal medicine and one of the systems by which you can use herbal medicines. But another thought, if you're in a pinch and you're like, I don't have hyssop handy and Mountain Rose Herbs takes forever and a day to ship you the damn herbs. It takes like a week or 2 every time to get them. So what do I do? Well, first of all, sometimes you can find stuff from Star West Botanicals or Frontier Co-op on Amazon. So you could occasionally get bulk herbs with 2-day prime shipping, and those are 2 companies that I've used for that purpose. The other thing is you could view it as like the qualities or the energetics of an herb and what that might make them well suited for. So one of the things about hyssop is it's a very aromatic herb, and it has these like volatile compounds that I'm probably not going to explain it in a great way. but they say that things with a lot of volatile aromatic compounds help to loosen up and expectorate crud. So similarly, there are a lot of aromatic herbs in our kitchen cupboard. So like thyme and rosemary, lavender, anything that has a really like strong aroma and it kind of gets into the air and has a really pungent smell to it, it probably is aromatic and it might be useful for this type of cough.
Yeah, no, that's good to know. Yeah. I hadn't heard of some of these herbs, so I'm glad I signed on for this podcast today. The more you know.
The more you know. So let me ask the dietitian in the house, do you have any particular nutritional support that might be useful when we're in cold and flu season? And then after I let you marinate on that, like I said, I have one more herb that I want to wrap us up with, but I'm curious to get a little bit more nutrition philosophy as it pertains to keeping the crud at bay.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think we talked about D, we talked about zinc. I mean, trying to get those in dietary. Vitamin D is a little challenging. We usually get the majority of our vitamin D from the sun, not from food, just FYI. So that could be more challenging. So supplementing during the winter makes sense. But zinc you could work in through your diet and try to maintain good levels of that. I think vitamin C is also something that can be really helpful for immune support, and it's sort of widely discussed. Now, I feel like growing up it was just drink orange juice, and it's like maybe having just the orange would be the most optimal, I would think, just because you get the fiber as well, which is going to be helpful for the microbiome. So eating vitamin C rich foods like oranges, peppers, cruciferous vegetables, those types of things is going to be helpful. And I think another really, really important one is polyphenols. So things that are rich in like blueberries, like rich colors. So blues, reds, purples, anything that sort of has some of those hues are going to be pretty high in polyphenols. A lot of spices and herbs have polyphenols. But I think that there's a lot of different ways that they can be very immune boosting. They're good for the microbiome as well. So it's sort of a twofer. You should probably be focusing on that anyway. If you struggle with IBS, having some good polyphenols in the diet, but they seem to be really helpful with the immune system as well. My dad swears that grape juice like cured him of colds that he would get each year. And I don't know if I 100% believe that, but it could be, there could be something to it. But trying to eat sort of more of these foods that are really rich in color or adding different spices and herbs into the diet, I think it is going to be beneficial. And just eating like solid square meals. So just going very fundamental, I think is important. Just because I think it can affect other things like sleep, how your body's managing stress, like some of these other areas that I also think you should be working on, like
the
sleep.
Unsexy basics, you mean?
Right. And again, I think during the winter, sleep can get kind of thrown off because circadian rhythms get off. And so there's sort of a host of weird things that happens when you're getting less outdoor light exposure. Like vitamin D levels drop a little bit, and then your sleep gets affected. Just in general, it can have different effects on function. But yeah, I think the more that you can pay attention to some just basic solid nutritional things and sprinkle in maybe a few extra polyphenol rich foods, try to kind of get some spices and herbs in dietarily, and make sure you're covering your base with like C and zinc and, some of the micronutrients. I think you'll be in good shape.
Yeah, I think that covers it pretty well. Sugar too, like if you can scale back sugar at least a bit when you're feeling under the weather, I think that would be useful. I don't know if you have to completely refrain, but scaling back certainly.
Yeah, I think not necessarily stressing your body out with anything. Not that like a little bit of sugar would, but if you're drinking, I was laughing because I feel like, you know, my extended family, it's like, oh, drink Sprite when you're not feeling well. I don't know. It's like a common thing. I don't know if it's a Midwest thing, but I would even hear that after hangovers, like Sprite was the answer. And I'm like, what is it about Sprite? Like I could maybe think ginger ale just because there's ginger, but Sprite seems to be just like this thing. Maybe again, it's just in my circle, but I feel like I've heard it from different families within the Midwest of, oh, like just drink Sprite when you're sick. Like it'll help your belly feel a little better. And more recently I heard that. And I had to laugh because I'm like, I don't know if there's anything really in Sprite that I think would help if you were having a cold, other than it being like a fluid. So if you are struggling to get any fluids in, it might be better than not having fluids, but there's a lot of other better options that I'd probably recommend. I think the same thing with like maybe Gatorade, like when you're sick, I feel like Gatorade's a big thing, and electrolytes could be something to focus in on, especially if you're having diarrhea or like there's a GI component to your gut stuff. But I think it would be slightly better to choose a less sugary option.
If you have the choice and they're
Right.
available, I would definitely choose the less sugary option. I'm still
Right.
back on the Sprite thing. I think that is hilarious. I agree. I think that ginger ale I could maybe see because maybe the ginger is therapeutic somehow, but Sprite.
I don't
It
know.
makes me think. So if not my favorite comedian, Mitch Hedberg has a bit where he says, I tried to make Sprite at home. It says the ingredients are lemon and lime, but there's more to it than that.
Right.
Hey, you want to come over for some homemade Sprite? Not till you figure out what the fuck else is in it.
Yeah.
And I just picture somebody drinking like lemon juice and lime juice put
Right.
together and try to pass it off as Sprite.
That's so funny.
Yeah, I can't wrap my head around how that would be therapeutic, though. I think that might be clever marketing on the part of the Sprite Corporation of America.
Right. And I don't know if it's, I've never seen Sprite claim that it's helpful when you are sick. I think it's just something that people have run with. Maybe here in my Midwestern Ohio area, but it's something I've definitely heard a lot here. It's like, oh,
that's
Sprite
a
will
funny
settle
one.
your belly. Again, I remember friends in college when they were hungover would be like, oh, get some Sprite. It'll settle your stomach. And it's like, what? What in it will settle your stomach? I don't know. Enlighten me.
My guess is that somewhere, somehow, some person was sick and they wanted ginger ale and they went to the store and they were completely sold out of ginger ale and then they had to get Sprite instead. And then they realized, oh, I think that really did help. And then I bet that's how it was born. Because again, I can't imagine anything specifically medicinal about Sprite. Comment if you're watching this on YouTube, if you have any backstory of the Sprite being good when
Yeah.
you're sick story. If you're from the Midwest and you know this, leave a comment because now I'm deeply intrigued by this theory. I think it's probably just a bunch of weirdness that you guys came up with.
Yeah. Well, and it does kind of make me laugh. And I'll tell my mom this till the end of time. She was the best sick mom. I don't know how else to describe it. She was just really a good sick mom. But I mean, I'd eat like popsicles. Like, when you're sick, it was like I was eating way more sugar than even typical. Cause it's like, oh, whatever you want. But that might not be good. Like, even if it's something simple like a banana or something, like something that has a little bit more nutritional value than just like straight popsicles for 12 hours and then I go to sleep. That's like very
if you have a sore
90s
throat,
to me.
Yeah, if you have a sore throat and you don't want to have anything else, I can kind of get behind the popsicle thing though. And that's where, I think we just covered this pretty well, but maybe reducing sugar where you can.
Right.
But I wouldn't say that you have to go completely sugar-free when you're sick. And sometimes, by the way, I see a study cited or I see a citation that says that X amount of sugar will suppress your immune system by 70% for 24 hours. Or have you seen it pops up every now and then? There's some sort of stat, and it's the same one that always makes its rounds. And I remember a few years ago, I tried to validate this claim, and I couldn't find anything reputable that substantiated this. So I don't know, when you see that metric of like,
Right.
a teaspoon of sugar suppresses the immune system for 72 hours or whatever it might be. Like, I don't know if that's true, but I think
that's would be an insane. Again, I'd be shocked if there was actually a lot of support for like 1 teaspoon of sugar
it
or
was
whatever.
something that frankly seemed unbelievable, but that's why it gets shared everywhere.
Yeah.
Again, remember people, the truth doesn't get the most shares on social media. The most provocative or unbelievable or clickbaity thing gets shared the most. So just because your great aunt Sally shared this post, it doesn't mean it's accurate.
Yeah. You know what? One other last comment I think as we start wrapping up is that I probably ate 10 to 15 popsicles while I was at the hospital giving birth to Cece. I don't think I've had popsicles since, like being sick, probably growing up. And like, that's the only thing you can eat. So I was like, keep them coming. I'm like, the nurse would be like, what flavor? And I'm like,
it's
I don't
not
care.
on me.
I know. Just keep it coming because you're starving. You haven't eaten. And it actually is good to get a little bit of something in your body because you're working muscles and things.
Well, that's the thing. The sugar in that case was good because you were essentially running a marathon. And it's just, you need like the energy jelly or the whatever when you're running that race. And if it comes in the form of popsicles and simple sugar to keep your blood sugar stable, so be it, man. You got that 100%. Kid out one way or another.
I know. I was gobbling them up right and left.
Yeah. See, meanwhile, I had all these ambitions. I made homemade popsicles for my birth. And I was like, ooh, I'm going to have like 2 varieties. And that way I have a little variety pack and we're going to bring them to the birth center. And then we ended up not going to the birth center. We went to the hospital and I forget if we brought the popsicles or if we left them home, but I don't even think you could have gotten a popsicle into me. Like I was just, there was no talking to me during that birth. I was like deep in a bad place, sucked in. And I remember my husband trying to get me to eat or trying to get me to drink some water. And like they couldn't get anything in me. So they had to give me fluids in an IV because they were like, Nikki, come on, man, you got to get something in your body. And I was too terrified of the pain and the contractions. I couldn't do it.
Oh my gosh.
But I'm glad that you enjoyed those popsicles. You enjoyed enough for the both of us, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's true.
So 2 more quick things at the end here, because again, I want to make sure that we are cognizant of time here. So I almost forgot this. This doesn't fall into the category of an herb, but I wanted to put in a quick plug for a probiotic. I am not typically super prescriptive with probiotics in the sense of like, this thing has data supporting this thing. I actually just have people try a bunch of them and see which one they end up liking. But one time a few years ago, maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, I had a sinus infection from HE double hockey sticks and it would not go away for like a month. No joke. I was trying all sorts of weird things in the neti pot. I had nasal sprays. I was taking supplements. I was taking herbs. You name it, I was doing it. And I could not get rid of the sinus infection. And my ENT at the time gave me a prescription for compounded steroids. And he sent me, I'm not even kidding. I don't even know if I told you this. So he sent me home with this prescription. He's like, okay, here's what you do. You go to the compounding pharmacy and you pick this up. And it's like a jug of liquid steroids is what it is. It's not a nasal spray and it's not a pill. It's a jug of liquid. And he says, what you do, you lay on your bed and you tip your head back off the edge of the bed. And then you pour this liquid into your nose. And then you try to hold it for as long as you can until it hurts too bad and you have to get it out.
Oh my
and
God,
then
this sounds like my hell.
And you have to have a bucket or something next to you and then you like roll over and sneeze into the bucket or something. But he's like, you'll probably only be able to hold it in for like 10 or 15 seconds before it's excruciating and you have to get it out. But like, do this twice a day and that'll be what you need to do. And I was like, this sounds like the worst idea in the world. That sounds like torture. So imagine the feeling you get when you get a nose full of water at the swimming pool, and imagine that steady for like 15 seconds, and you're doing it to yourself like an idiot. I can't do this.
Right.
So I had the jug, the $50 jug of the steroids from the compounding pharmacy, and I looked at it for a month and I couldn't do it. I was like, this sounds too terrible. And my Hail Mary before I took these damn steroids, I was like, okay, I'll do anything else. And I had tried all of my herbs, all of my nasal sprays, all of my things. And then it occurred to me, I was like, well, there are probiotics that have been shown to reduce the incidence of colds and flus and upper respiratory infections. And that's not exactly what I'm dealing with here, but maybe the logic of boosting the immune system or helping the immune system is going to be close enough to what I want to do. Maybe that could help me kick this. So I looked it up on probioticadvisor.com. Total plug. It's a great resource. It's like $40 for the year. Well worth it. So I went on there and I looked up some strains that were shown to help reduce the incidence of upper respiratory tract infections. And I found a product. I think I might have gone to Whole Foods to pick it up even, but Now brand has a probiotic that they call their respiratory care probiotic. And it's just 2 strains. I've got it pulled up right here. So it is, it's Lactobacillus acidophilus NCFM. And that's the predominant strain in this blend. And then it's also got some bifidolactis BI04. And that's the 2 ingredients. And I took that and I was like, this is the Hail Mary. I hope to God it works. I kid you not. I took 1 capsule with dinner, went to bed, woke up the next morning, sinus infection, 50% better.
Whoa.
Took another dose or 2 that day, went to bed, woke up, sinus infection was gone.
That's insane.
So it's my favorite product now. And I like when the friends across the street had the Rona, I brought them a bottle of this probiotic because I just keep it on hand now. And I'm like, here, take this. And it really pulled me out of the gutter on that sinus infection. So I didn't have to waterboard myself with the damn steroids, but it was fantastic. And I take that as a preventative during cold and flu season now because it was so helpful for me that time. The last thing I wanted to mention, the herb that tastes grosser than probably anything you've ever tasted in your entire life, is andrographis. But here's the thing, it works. So if you can suck it up and do it, it's a great herb. You could get it as a tincture and it's hella gross. I would never, ever recommend this as a tea because it's simply too disgusting and you'll never drink the tea. Or you could get it as like capsules or tablets. When the house across the street came down with COVID, I sent a bottle of echinacea and a bottle of andrographis tincture it was the husband who had COVID. And I sent it over next door and I was telling the wife, I was like, all right, listen, these are the 2 grossest things you'll taste, but in different ways. Like echinacea, I don't think is pleasant either. But tell your husband to suck it up and just do it and it'll help him. I think she got like 2 doses in him and then he gave up and he wouldn't take them anymore because they were so bad. But my point is, andrographis is another one. If you look up the research on it, it's comparable with something like echinacea as far as a preventative or a treatment for acute upper respiratory infections. You just have to get it in your body. So I would say try to take it as a capsule or a tablet. I would absolutely no way you would do this as a tea. I wouldn't even suffer through a tincture if I were you. I would just keep it in a capsule where it belongs and not let it stray out of the capsule. But that is another very powerful herbal ally when you're looking for a little bit of seasonal immune support.
Awesome. Love it.
I think that's a wrap, folks.
All right.
So keep doing those unsexy basics: sleep, stress management, fiber, vitamin C. You know the drill. Don't overdo it on sugar if you can get away with it. But, if you need popsicles, sometimes you just need popsicles.
It's true.
Also, last thing to share, I think Bob Barker heals us all. So I grew up every sick day in my childhood. I watched The Price is Right with Bob Barker. That's important. So if you can get your hands on some old rerun episodes on YouTube of Bob Barker doing The Price is Right, I think that Bob will heal whatever ails you. It doesn't matter what it is. So That's what the world needs more of, is some Bob Barker Price is Right episodes. No offense, Drew Carey, but it's not you and your episodes. But very opinionated on this.
Yes.
Way superior with Bob Barker. But yeah, hopefully that offers you a little bit more resiliency and a few more tools in the tool belt for this cold and flu season. And as per our usual, we will see you right back here next week for another episode of the IBS Freedom Podcast. Until then, take care of yourselves.